Welcome, everyone. My name is Eric Wolf, and I serve as the Executive Director of the World Food Travel Association based in Portland, Oregon. And today we are about to begin Session 3 of the Online Food Travel Summit. Session 3 is Managing Food Traveler Expectations in Over-Touristed Destinations. And handling that topic today for us is Danny Adler, who's the Managing Director of Adler and Marlow Tour Operators in Barcelona, Spain. Danny is an ex-New Yorker, and he has a funny story. He has recurring nightmares from working as a chef at a restaurant. In 2003, there was a major blackout in the northeastern part of the United States, and he was working in the kitchen, and he made sure every plate still went out perfect, working in the dark, no electricity at all. So that would cause nightmares for anyone for sure. And Danny does not like long walks on the beach. So all right then. Well, Danny, without further ado, I will stop sharing my screen and turn things over to you.
Sure. Well, hi everyone. This issue of overtourism is clearly an important one as we're seeing more and more people talk about it. Let me just pull up my shared screen here for a moment. And the overtourism is something that we need to take very seriously. I don't believe it's being talked about enough, and the consequences of ignoring it are catastrophic, whether we're focusing on general tourism or something that's more near and dear to all of our hearts is the gastronomic tourism and food and wine travel. So quickly, just to say, what is overtourism? And with this image, we do kind of capture it. But the essence of it is that too many tourists. But too many tourists, it's a very subjective term. So it clearly needs to be defined basically by each destination. So when we talk about too many tourists, if it's that the rent prices of our favorite restaurant shoot up to make way for tourist traps, or if you can't find a spot on your favorite beach because of too many tourists, this is clearly a sign of over tourism. Or when tourists can't view or appreciate certain important landmarks, this is over tourism. Or finally, if we see that the fragile environments that our favorite restaurants that are whether it's parks or whatever are now being degraded, this is all clear signs of over-tourism. So what's the problem? To address it a little bit, just to point out, I want to start with two stories that are quite personal to me. Both are based here in Barcelona. I moved here in 2007, and one of the reasons I moved here, quite frankly, was for a world famous food market, the Boqueria, which everything from the access to such fantastic fresh produce, fantastic fish, foie gras, and really just anything that any chef or even just foodie could be interested in was located in this one amazing place. And slowly over the years, we've noticed that the stalls have started to change from what would be interesting for a local to what would be more interested for a tourist, as we've seen that the amount of people inside has drastically changed from being predominantly locals shopping for food for their homes to mass tour groups of up to 30 people sometimes passing through. So when you put yourself in the shoes of, let's say, a fishmonger who's the third generation of that stall, very proud of that, but your children are maybe not so interested in going into the industry, and all of a sudden someone comes and approaches you, says, "Well, I'll buy it," and they want to sell sushi rolls, which are great grab and go, or they want to sell fruit drinks and such, which is what we're actually seeing in the Boqueria. We're losing the authenticity of these places, and that's a big problem. And so that's one story. The other one is that I lost my favorite restaurant, and I'm not going to name names, but there was a restaurant here in Barcelona which was it ticked all the boxes in terms of fabulous environment, fabulous food, very authentic. It really was a good example of local cuisine. The whole vibe of the place was very Barcelona, and it was a place that I would bring my fiance, that I would bring my friends, that I would bring people visiting me, that I'd bring even clients of my company. And anytime we were there, it was very much anyone that would just feel like this is Barcelona. I'm eating this local cuisine. I'm learning about it. I'm soaking in the local culture just by sitting here. And again, just like the case of the Boqueria, over the years, I think it was officially about last year that I stopped going there, because I showed up one night and I looked around, and it was 3 tour groups and all tourists. And I don't begrudge tour groups or food tours and things, obviously, as I work in the industry. But at the same time, we lost this fantastic, authentic place. So these are examples of something where I think that anyone in a lot of popular destinations can relate to, whether it's shown itself in, maybe an over-visited winery, or a market which is no longer visited by locals because of the tourists. This is not specific to Barcelona, but I think to shed some light on these 2 points. So which this all leads to really the loss of authenticity. And so that's my next big point is, paella and tapa in Barcelona. So, under Franco's time in Spain, we saw that there was the use of certain tools trying to attract people to Spain. This was how everyone internationally started associating tapas, paella, sangria, bullfighting with all of Spain, and really that doesn't belong in Barcelona, and it's just not part of Catalan culture. It's not part of the local culture. And so when all of a sudden we have hordes of tourists going up and down what is one of the most famous boulevards in Barcelona, arguably one of the most famous boulevards in the world, La Rambla, and they demand something which is their expectation of what the culture is, despite it not actually being authentically of the place. When the demand of those tourists starts to outweigh the demand of the locals, we see the change. We see a change of what is perceived as the authentic. We start to see a change to what is being offered. And so hence we're seeing up and down the Rambla dozens and dozens of paella joints, which is something typically of Valencia, or tapas restaurants offering the best tapas or the best sangria. And really these things, well, it's not that, hey, you can have it in Barcelona, but to have the most important boulevard full of these things that really don't take Catalan culture at all, that's a problem. That means that we're losing this wonderful, authentic destination, and we're replacing authentic cuisine with something that it belongs somewhere else, really. So this all leads to really understanding that more is not always better. I think the classic, the travel industry, and like many other industries, has really focused exclusively on growth for so long, with little to almost no concern to the overall impact of said growth. So, after decades of uncontrolled growth, we're really starting to kill the goose that lays the golden eggs here. We're ruining these fabulous food destinations. We're losing destinations in general by focusing pretty exclusively on immediate bottom line, and not focusing on the travel experience overall, not focusing on other elements. So that's really the gist of the problem, or I should say this is the gist of the problem, which is that the quality of the dining and travel experience is clearly in jeopardy. This is an issue that it really should affect us all as travelers as well as travel professionals. We're losing great destinations as we see that tourism is starting to create more problems than benefits for the local. To take a step back to what I mentioned in the last slide, if we're only saying that growth is better, that we should increase the numbers, that, oh, and there's the common thing that people say that it's better for the economy and they're leaving so much money. Well, when the benefit starts to outweigh when the harm starts to outweigh the benefit, then we have a serious problem, and it's one that needs to be addressed. So I'd say that now that we've really shed some light on what the problem is and we understand it, then let's start focusing on what's the solution. So we need a new recipe for successful gastronomic travel in order to not corrode authenticity. That sums it up really, and I say gastronomic in that way because this is, as we all know, not exclusive to food and wine travel. This is a serious issue affecting us all. And so what we're looking at is an overall paradigm change. And we really have to rethink how we travel. We have to really protect our destinations as we're going to lose some absolutely great ones. Barcelona is just one example, and I've seen it. It was one of my real motivations for starting Adler and Marlowe was to try to share authentic experiences. As I saw that over the last decade or so in Barcelona, particularly, we've seen wonderful restaurants be replaced with more tourist-oriented restaurants with large chains, and we've started to see that the feeling in the air about the food scene is starting to completely be degraded. So in order for us to address this paradigm change, I'd say that the first things first is for us to define what is successful travel. So what does successful food travel look like? Now, as outlined by, I'd say, one of the authorities on this subject at the moment is the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, is really advocating this holistic model for sustainable tourism. And so that is to say that, if they food tourism to a destination, let's say it's Barcelona, let's say it's Venice, let's say it's New York City, wherever it might be, there's an interest in this destination. So that interest should and visitation should lead to gastro community benefit. And so when I say should, what I mean is that it should, in order to promote successful travel, in order to promote the sustainable tourism, so that we can, for many, many years to come, enjoy these wonderful food and wine destinations. So if you have this interest in, let's say, Barcelona, and you have lots of people coming here, the gastro community benefit is really, we start to see young, talented chefs experimenting with new things, new restaurants opening, new signature cocktails being developed, making a destination which is known for its food even better, and keeping it sharp, keeping it tight. So with that, let's say, increased offering and increased gastronomic community benefit, the next thing that we need to focus on in order to maintain this model is the protection of the quality of said expansion. If we have a new restaurant that is starting not really focused on quality, it's all going to fall apart. So that's really the wheel here, is that if you have the interest in a place that we have and lots of visitation to that place, then we end up with a more interesting offering in that place, which then needs to be protected. And if it's protected well, we'll have even more interest, and so on and so forth, and the circle goes on. This is being defined as really one of a key model for how we can have sustainable tourism. So really, how do we achieve this? We need to focus on three key stakeholders here, and that need to work really to try and change the paradigm. And so these are the travelers, the travel professionals, and the travel destination stewards. So let's take these one by one here, and really look at how this can change, how these different stakeholders really play an important role in addressing this over tourism problem. Um, so the travelers here, they being a responsible traveler really refers to the creation of better places for people to live and visit, um, which really is by definition the exact opposite to what we're defining as over-tourism problem, whereas that over-tourism is reducing the quality of life for local residents and creating a negative experience for visitors. So the responsible traveler really needs to try and offset this, making the place much more interesting place to visit. So being informed is I'd say an important first step here. Is that taking a more responsible approach to tourism can really help to mitigate these negative effects that we see from over tourism. So being informed about the place, it's let's say think about the place and also think about the time when we're going to travel somewhere. You know, we can't all show up at the amazing sunset beach destination and ask for a cocktail at the exact same time. Otherwise, because if we do that, nobody has a good time. So really, you know, if we talk about kind of staying informed, it's to understand that we can try to visit places at other times. We get different places at different times. This is not just about this idealistic, you know, let's try and make everything better. This is also for really personal gain as well, to say that as staying informed about, well, if we know that everybody is hitting a specific destination in a certain month, maybe show up at a different month. You're going to have a much more realistic insight into daily life if you do that, and which is going to further contribute to a much better travel experience. If you try to go to the same restaurant and the same bar and at the same time as everybody, as opposed to if you go at a little bit of an off time and you get a chance to talk to the restaurateur, to talk to the bartender, and have this casual experience, it's a much more enriching experience as a traveler. So as well as if you try to kind of, you know, knowing about what place you're famous, go to another place. Try to play it out with lesser known places, because it's very likely that you'll be eagerly welcomed as one of the first few tourists to arrive at that place. The next message is something to address with travel is support local businesses. It's fundamental. We're talking hiring local guides. We're talking eating in local restaurants, knowing what is local. No one's going to begrudge you if you visit Rome and you're just there for 5 days and you're having a Southeast Asian craving. Hey, go for it. But know where you are, and it's important to try to really soak in local cuisine, local what the locals do. Because if not, if we start to see that there's a promotion and a demand for something that doesn't belong in the place, we get back to our paella and tapas problem of losing authenticity, which is key. We need to protect. And finally, this is the point, which is funny to say, but it's important. Behave. I mean, this is really leave very light footprints. It's important that if you're visiting these food destinations, if you're visiting a destination, try to respect this place. If you can observe or inform yourself that the locals drink in a certain way, you know, it's not about just going and it's all about you. It's fundamental to try to respect local customs and do as the locals do. Otherwise, we are again going to ruin the authenticity and really create an animosity. And this is an anger towards tourists that we've really seen a lot in the last few years around Europe, leading to the tourists go home and leading to a policy which I don't believe is sustainable, which is, you know, bring up the drawbridge and everyone stops, because that's no answer to this problem either. But as long as if you start to behave as a traveler, if you'll start to help to change the negative idea of what tourists are and are to negatively affecting places. Um, Moving forward to the next category of stakeholder, this is one that, and I believe that most of you listening to me fall into this category as travel professionals. Um, First, I have to say, do not underestimate this problem. The consequences of not taking it seriously are catastrophic. We I can't say it enough. We will lose fabulous places on a local level. It's, maybe you lose your favorite bar, your favorite restaurant, but losing whole cities or towns that are known for fantastic food, and losing it to lack of authenticity is really what I'm talking about. It's such an important thing, and travel professionals are in a key position to act accordingly to help address and really fix this problem. And how do we think we could focus on being really socially responsible? We cannot, in this industry, just think about the immediate bottom line. Rather, it should all be about the focus of the overall traveler experience. Um, Getting back to the restaurant example with seeing various tour groups in there, you might, in the industry, maybe you work with a restaurant and it's such a good example of a local restaurant. It works so well on tours. It works so well for your business, and you can maybe turn it 3 times a night. If you ruin that restaurant, you'll ruin it for yourselves as well, in order to use it for whatever purpose, whether it's for clients or even for your own enjoyment. So really being socially responsible about how we construct tours in the industry, being socially responsible about how we sell our tours and how we sell the destinations. This also applies to really informing clients when they visit places. Maybe it becomes an important thing that a guide should share with a group. Say this is the way we eat. This is the way that we do things. This is the times that we eat. So it's the travel professional's responsibility in this sense to share that important information on local customs. Really, finally, it's spread out a little bit. Barcelona as a destination, Venice as a destination, any other really increasingly popular destinations, they're not the only ones. Sometimes going out to other places are, first off, it's interesting for travel professionals to offer new products. It's interesting to offer new places. If it doesn't, for Barcelona as an example, it doesn't get much more authentic than going 30 minutes to an hour outside of the city and having a really authentic farmhouse lunch at certain times. Really, that's a way to get in tune with Catalan culture. And for the professionals, you're going to have happy clients who have now, they don't feel like they've been cattle called into a really cookie cutter experience. They've gotten more in touch. So it's really a win-win. Whereas at or I should say win-win-win, whereas that you have an interesting product to sell, a client who's very happy and excited to have the truly authentic experience by spreading out to a maybe lesser known destination. And finally, the destination itself is not going to have the strain of overtourism if you start to spread out to other places. And so finally, the stakeholder that is maybe one of the most important of the three are the travel destination stewards. Now, this could show up as in many different ways. This could be local governments. This could be tourism boards. This could be even the police, the businesses. But increasingly, as this issue becomes more known about, we've seen that some of the most successful stewards are public and private partnerships. Whereas that we don't want either side of it to be too strong or to be too skewed. We don't want too much red tape to not be able to really offer these fantastic travel experiences to guides or to visitors or travelers. At the same time, if we have everyone focusing on profit and not on the public good, we have a big issue. So these public-private partnerships are, I think, becoming increasingly popular, especially when, and are very effective for dealing with the over-tourism problem. Um, so an example is the Global Sustainable Tourism Council is one that really is working to establish uh, and manage, let's say, global sustainable standards. And these are guiding principles and minimum requirements that any tourism business or destination should really aspire to reach in order to protect and sustain the world's global and cultural resources. So this is something that I think is fundamental in terms of looking forward towards what how we can protect local destination or local destinations, and really that local and national governments and tourism boards, along with the tourism businesses and local businesses, should need to work together in order to create new standards. Excuse me. The when we start to see, let's say, everyone focusing on numbers, and if everyone, as it was, if we want to have higher numbers, which means better, and it doesn't matter if those numbers are high-end travelers, cruise ship travelers, whether they're travelers who are coming for duty-free shopping or backpackers. It was just about numbers, increase. And so when we don't have these public-private partnerships protecting the places, we end up with these the kind of really poorly managed destinations where things are left to run amok, and the case is sometimes that it's increasingly difficult to introduce tourist taxes, to introduce a per capita arrival fee on cruise liners, and it's whether it's that they are unable to enact these policies or have refused to do it due to the pressures. That's something that is clearly an important issue to try and combat when focusing on combating over-tourism. And so really that leads to enacting sound policy. This is to say that whether it's putting forward policies that will protect housing, or putting forward policies that will protect local businesses, local restaurants, local bars, they need to put them forth in order to not ruin the authenticity. And we need to make sure that the policies being put forward are keeping the destination sustainable for all. And beyond the policy really is about the planned communication and enforcement of these policies. That it's one thing to say that we're going to put forth this new policies, but finally these travel destination stewards need to communicate to the local residents in order to prevent such anger, that they need to communicate the benefits. When we say that there's going to be a tourism tax, the local residents need to understand exactly how that's benefiting local community. If it's to say that we're going to protect a restaurant which is run by locals, or they're going to be given certain tax incentives, tax benefits, that should be communicated to the people if that's the case of the destination, or if it shows its face in terms of employment. Always keeping in mind that that needs to be communicated well to the local residents. Finally, another important point of communication is it needs to be the travel destination stewards must communicate to the travelers that you are welcome to come and enjoy our destination, but don't screw around. This is a place that is in a very popular destination that is in danger of losing its authenticity if you don't respect the local customs and the local way of life. So what this all leads to really is a new model which has to come forth, which will really help to preserve popular destinations and enrich the experience for travelers as a whole, and hopefully making it more interesting to eat and drink everywhere in the world. So that's really that's all I have to say on that matter. That's the end of my talk. I guess I'm going to put this back on to Eric now.
Yeah, just one second. I'm making some notes here.
Sure.
All right. Very interesting, Danny. Thank you very much. So you gave us a lot of food for thought here. I mean, I think at the crux of the issue is you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. You know, the word is out. Barcelona is hot. Amsterdam is hot. Venice is hot. San Francisco is hot. You know, you're not going to uninvite tourists to come.
Sure.
And how do you deter or say no to those tourists who have never been? You know, someone who's younger and has always had the dream of visiting Tuscany, or has heard only great things about Barcelona, or knows that they really need to visit London, and they've never been. And all of a sudden, a destination, you know, there's too many people, and you were talking about, you know, local stewards, and there's no policy in place. So is there a fine balance between control? I mean, are we talking capacity controls? You know, you talked about creating destination stewards and public-private partnerships. You know, I think that can help, but I think educating the traveler and maybe helping them to aspire to visit other alternative destinations, I don't know that that's going to be an easy sell.
Sure. It is a hard thing, which leading to really my first point is that this is something that affects us all. This is not something that is to be taken lightly by anybody. So it's going to be a while. And certainly everybody wants to see the Mona Lisa. If you go to Paris, you want to see the thing that you're supposed to see, and it's very hard to convince. Oh, well, sorry, you shouldn't do that because it's ruining. But if we can help to re-educate people, and if this becomes more of an issue and people really realize what's at stake, I believe that it's not to say that people are not going to want to visit Tuscany or the Mona Lisa or the Sagrada Familia in the case of Barcelona, or these top sites or top, let's say, sites within popular destinations. But at least they might be a bit more conscious of it and start to require and expect that the stewards are doing a better job to control the destination. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this is going to change overnight, but the first step is to get on top of a roof and scream to everyone that, hey, we have a problem here. And so you're talking about a traveler who wants to visit this destination. If they don't know there's a problem, then they're not even going to consider it. And they just say, well, I'm going to go to Tuscany. I'm going to go, I want to go and overflood these small towns in Tuscany and eat the best pasta in the world, and nobody's going to stop me. But if you just take a second to say, well, wait a minute, we need to consider when are maybe the less popular times to visit Tuscany. What do the Tuscans think about this? What are the Tuscans saying? And it's really, it fits in nicely with what we see as global tendencies of the world is shrinking and better communication. You know, I don't want to speak from too much of an idealistic point of view. Obviously, we have to address the practicality of it all. So my suggestion really is about that communication is one of the most, I think, the strongest tools right now. Get the message out there that this is a problem, and then from there we'll see what happens.
Very interesting. Do you have an issue in Barcelona of people who decide they want to move there? We have that in Portland, and obviously, you know, it's easy for Americans to move to Portland because it's all one country. But you know, we've been in our city has been in so many movies and shows and stuff, and people come here, and the climate is pleasant, the food is great, the town is adorable, and all of a sudden, I want to move here. Do you have that in Barcelona?
We do. I mean, and I may be in one of those cases, aren't I? But I wouldn't say that that's a problem, or at least it's not one that has shown itself. A bigger problem is that people fall in love with the idea of Barcelona, and people with great means, they come in and they'll invest in it, but they don't really live here. So if they come and they live here, then they're going to join the group of people who are going to be advocating the protection of the destination. If they, in my case, I am one of those people. I arrived in Barcelona over a decade ago. I thought this place is amazing and the food is great. I'm not going anywhere. And from there, then I started to. It was a case of immigrants wave the flag the hardest, and so I started to really get involved with Catalan cuisine. I started cooking Catalan cuisine. I started understanding local customs and ways. So I wouldn't identify that as a problem group, at least in the case of Barcelona. If
Okay.
anything, I'd say those people are some of the biggest advocates for the protection of the destination.
Interesting. And they certainly add diversity and sometimes can really propel the economy in different ways than adding more tourists.
Sure.
It's interesting. I wrote really what you're talking about when you're talking about the authenticity is the threat to food culture. Are we losing our food cultures? And I wrote an article that I published on Medium recently about this very topic. And what's happening in Portland is that our food cart areas are going away, and they're putting in more and more and more apartment buildings to the point where you can be going down a street and there's a new apartment building being erected on every block. It's just, it's crazy. And so they move these food carts out of the way, and then they have to either go out of business or find new areas. But I think that's from our limited Portland perspective and what's happening here. But really, what you're talking about is the threat to food culture. And if people are coming to Barcelona and expecting paella and tapas, then I think part of the issue there is that they don't know what's different. There are these iconic foods that Spain, the whole country, is known for, but people don't know that there are multiple regions in Spain.
Yep.
Or like look at Italy. Wow, what a fantastic example. I mean, everyone assumes that Italian food is X, Y, and Z, but if you go to Sicily, it's different. If you go to Bari, it's different. If you go to Milan, it's different. If you go up towards the Austrian border, it's different again.
Sure.
And I mean, vastly, huge differences. And so, are you going to get pasta with red sauce by the Austrian border in Italy? Well, I'm sure you can find it, but that's not authentic for that area. So I guess, this is, you raise some really interesting issues. And you talked about the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, and you gave us a formula of what you thought could work. How do you incite local government into action to create these public-private partnerships? Because we all know governments don't move quickly.
That's true. I would say that don't communicate it as a threat and a problem, communicate it as an opportunity. If in the foods of Catalonia, for example, which are really not well known if you don't live here, there are certain dishes that people don't find out about till they get here. But if you communicate to the local government, whether it's the tourism board or it's the policymakers, and you say, wouldn't it be great if somebody sitting in Kansas City knew what a chatonada is, which is a really typical Catalan dish? Wouldn't it be interesting, where in our benefit, if this was more understood, so that when our traveler is sitting in his computer researching for his trip to Barcelona and Kansas City, when he sits at his computer and he types in, what am I going to eat in Barcelona, that it's starting to have a greater, let's say the Catalan cuisine will have a greater presence. And this is interesting for Catalans, because if you take a destination like Barcelona, or let's move it away from my home turf, and we say that it's, if it's a different region of Italy, or if it's a different region of Vietnam, these are places that have awesome food in different corners. But if people understand the nuances of the differerences, it makes people more interested in spreading out, and which is really better for everybody, as I pointed out during the talk. We're spreading out the human traffic, we're spreading out the money, we're promoting different elements. So to sum it up, I really think that the best way to encourage the governments and the public sector to form these public-private partnerships is show them opportunity. money talks, and at the end of the day, I don't see this as I see this as a problem, but I see it more interesting as an opportunity for over across the world as a traveler, as a travel professional.
I'm just making some notes here. So if these partnerships were created for the local governments, you'd be talking about rural economic development.
Sure.
You would be talking about distributing income more equitably. So rather than all the money going to the cities, it's spread out a little bit more. Interesting. Now, so obviously a lot of what we've talked about affects the work of tourism offices and governments engaged in economic development and tourism. But we also have quite a few business owners or small business entrepreneurs who have been attending our sessions. And from their perspective as business owners, what advice would you give them in terms of what to do differently? They run tours, and like you said, in France or in Paris, everyone wants to see the Mona Lisa. There is only one Eiffel Tower, and what would you tell these business owners when people are coming and say they want to do X, Y, and Z when they come to a place?
Sure. I mean, be creative. This is an opportunity for you to stand out, whether it's the Mona Lisa, whether it's the Sagrada Familia, or the Eiffel Tower. This isn't you. Everyone wants to do that. Figure out a way to include that in a plan, in an itinerary, and then add it to something that is lesser known and is going to stand out in your client's minds. So maybe that means do the Sagrada Familia and an unknown modernist site, and focus the itinerary on the contrast and the similarities of modernism, but what made Gaudi so different. Maybe it means that if you're doing let's say if someone wants to come and do a wine tasting, and they're focusing on the wine, and they're expecting certain specific wines, and they say, well, that you try to offer some of the known ones or some of the unknown ones, making you a little bit different. It's always about throwing that different flair, doing something that nobody else is doing. That adding creativity to any of these experiences, which will incorporate the sought after destinations, but in a way that only the local professional is going to know this is the best way to do it. This is the way that the other people aren't doing it. That means, you should wake up much earlier and see the Sagrada Familia or see the Mona Lisa at let's say an off hour, and then after that we're going to go and we're going to see the another site, or we're going to, let's say, go into someone's home that has a view of the Sagrada Familia, and cook together with a local talking about Catalan culture. Just to throw an idea from the hip there. But specifically with food travel, I mean, I get that often with my clients. I have people who want to see the Boqueria. There are people that want to cruise the stalls of the Boqueria, and it doesn't matter that I tell them, hey, listen, it's become very touristy. And it's not to say I don't discourage them. It's still a wonderful market, but there's a way to do it now. And so apart from be creative, I say, well, just know your destinations and know how to approach them, and try to approach them in a way that's different than everybody else.
Yeah. So the advice that you gave was great for tour operators. Let's talk a little bit about food service. So restaurants, bars, wineries, breweries, distilleries, from their perspective, they want to open where more customers will visit them, either walking by, or it's easier for them to get to. A brewery in town is going to get a lot more visitors stopping in if it's a 5-minute taxi ride away than having to go 45 minutes out into the countryside. So what would you tell those food service professionals who want to reach tourists, but by opening another business, are they becoming part of the problem?
No, they're not part of the problem. They're part of the problem if they're not respecting local customs and cuisine. And so let's say if we're talking about, my immediate bottom line is going to be better if I open a mediocre paella place on the Rambla. Now you're clearly dealing with a extremely high level of disposable income passing in front of your establishment every day. And if you were producing a passable rice dish, which is, it's by any local, they would laugh at it. But if by let's say a tourist doesn't know any different between a good and authentic paella and not a paella, um, it really, you're falling into the same danger as I mentioned during the talk. While it might work on a short term, it's really going to ruin the destination on the long term. It's going to ruin the the overall experience of your diners and the expectations of the diners. So I believe it's a stronger business policy, whether you're opening a bar, you're opening a restaurant, to try to respect where you are and respect the local cuisine, respect the local customs. It doesn't mean you have to go 45 minutes away from the center. It doesn't mean that you have to be away from where the tourists are. But if you're going to be in a place where it's, let's say, low-hanging fruit of reaching the tourists because they're walking in front of you left and right, then you have not just, you have a responsibility to do authentic, but you not just without responsibility. It's in your interest to be authentic, because you'll be respected by not only your fleeting tourists, but by locals.
So, okay, let's take this a step further then. So let's say that you want to start a restaurant or cafe or bar in Barcelona. And let's say that all of a sudden, all the local businesses say, this is a great idea, we're going to work on preserving our food culture. And all of a sudden, all of the businesses start saying Catalan cuisine, Catalan cuisine, Catalan cuisine. And then you've got 50 Catalan restaurants along Las Ramblas that, are all doing very similar versions of authentic Catalan cuisine. So
Sure.
that becomes an issue. And then what if someone says, you know what, there's too many Catalan restaurants, I'm going to open a Belgian beer bar in Barcelona. So should they do that?
Sure. I don't see a problem in diversity. In fact, I would, as a local to Barcelona, I would be upset if I could only have access to authentic Catalan cuisine. But it's really about the, let's say, McDonaldization of important boulevards like La Rambla. And to that, this is now more of less of a message to the local entrepreneur, who I know we're supposed to be talking to in this case, but it's really to the stewards again. That shouldn't be allowed. So no, I think that as locals, as travelers, and as professionals, we need to cry out that we need to protect authenticity. Opening a Belgian beer bar on the Rambla is going to overall degrade the experience, and it's a problem that is that, well, it's just one Belgian beer bar, that it represents it's a symptom of a much greater problem. Also, having said that, of course, we don't want dozens and dozens of the same but slightly different Catalan restaurants. What we want is a place that it could be a Thai restaurant, it could be a Texas barbecue joint, but it needs to fit in with where it is. It needs to fit in some way with where you put your restaurant, with being respectful to the local local location. So whether it's on the Rambla, if it's in the Gothic quarter, you need to be respectful of where you are and the impact that you're going to have. Which is on one side certainly about social responsibility. On the other side, it's about it's in your interest. I do believe that it is in your interest to take that into consideration, that your business will thrive if you consider that fact. This issue is really not going to go away, and the more that people demand the respect of a local destination, they will respect a business that also has the same values.
And I guess, it's really, how do we define what respect to the local destination means? I think another way that this could work, I do think there needs to be like you said, a steward. There needs to be some movement in this direction of responsibility, and I'm not even going to say sustainability, because I think that's overused and not a genuine term as much anymore. But the use of local heroes and influencers a famous chef, a famous winemaker, a famous brewer, a highly respected food tour guide, something like that, or a food tour journalist. These are people I think who can, they're just by opening their mouths, they can start the seeds of change. And because they have so many followers and so many people want to know what they have to say, I think that they could really start the seeds of change, the wheels of change really quickly. Imagine a well-respected blogger in an area says, hey, you know what, we've got an issue. And then all of a sudden, a chef gets behind that, and a winemaker says, you know what, I agree. And then it becomes a movement.
Sure. I mean,
Could
it's
that
focusing on these figureheads.
could that figure into your concept of the public-private partnership and evolving change?
Certainly, because I don't want to limit that the destination stewards are certainly not limited to only these public-private partnerships. I think figureheads and spokespeople will play a big role. Um, a great example is that we've seen that how Ferran Adrià, who is a very famous internationally renowned chef, has played such an important role in promoting Spain. And so we've seen him in terms of the high end, or let's say the most modern culinary movements. We've seen that he has played a big role in pushing that forward. And certainly, if we had these influencers addressing a subject, and it ties in with everything that we've talked about today. It ties in perfectly with communication strategy. It ties in perfectly with understanding the benefits of addressing this problem, or let's say the opportunities with addressing this problem. And I believe that is a way forward.
Fantastic. Well, Danny, this has been a fascinating conversation. Really appreciate your insight and your experience that you've taken the time today to share with other colleagues around the world. Really, thank you so much from everyone here at the association and the food tourism industry. We thank you, and hopefully we will get a chance to meet in person one day.
Perfect. Well, thanks a lot for the opportunity, and something that I really hope that everyone takes seriously moving on to the future.
Thanks, Danny.
All right. Take care.
Bye.